I'd liken the Royal Marines to a tiger. Lurk in the shadows. They're big, strong hunters. They're stealthy, they've got camouflage. Power. It's a predator. You've got a tiger about to pounce on you. Things are going to get pretty scary pretty fast. So by the time you realise we're there, it's too late.
Hello everyone, I hope you're all keeping well. Thanks for taking the time out to listen to me ramble on for a while. As I'm sure many of you are aware, I spent 7 years serving as a Royal Marines Commando, 5 of which were as a sniper. It's not just a job, it's a way of life. It's from when you get up in the morning to when you go to bed at night. It's the way you conduct yourself on a day-to-day basis. Whether you're in the Marines, you're an ex-Marine, it really does run with you for the rest of your life. Like yourselves, I grew up in and around South London. I went to a local independent school. I completed my GCSEs, A-levels, and I'd even filled out a UCAS application for university. Being an independent school, it was very much expected to go on to university. It seemed like the natural progression for me. At least that's what all my friends were doing at the time. However, the more and more I looked into it and really sat down to think about it, I knew it wasn't the right path for me. So I headed into my careers office at 17, had a look around. There's different jobs, there's the roles in the Army, the Navy, the RAF. The only one that really stood out to me was the Royal Marines. I wanted to know what was the hardest regiment to get into, and the Royal Marines is what I was told. I then had to travel down to the training centre to complete what's called a PRMC, which is the Potential Royal Marines course, where you basically just get beasted for a week and at the end get told if you passed or failed. I passed mine and got given my start date for the 32 weeks of training.
The PRMC stands for Potential Royal Marine course, which is a short selection course before the 32 weeks training.
Okay, this time then, I sprint to that wall, touch it, and then back to me. Go!
That's where they filter out a lot of guys, because they just want to see how deep you can dig.
Come on, let's go, 50, let's go!
Keep going, don't stop, keep going.
You see a lot of guys start to frail.
Come on!
It just comes down to how much you want it, and how much pain you're willing to go through in order to get it. If you pull yourself off any parts of the course, it's an automatic fail. I think I'm most nervous about the confidence test, because I've got a very small fear of heights. I never really got to a point where I wanted to drop out. It didn't come into my mind. The reason I'm there is because it's hard. If I went down there and it was easy, it wouldn't be for me. It just gave me more motivation to keep going.
15 of you in the room. I've got 9 certificates, gents.
Passing this course will essentially mean everything to me.
Who thinks they've passed, who thinks they've failed?
This is the biggest thing I'm aiming to do with my life.
Gents, I'm only messing with this. Congratulations, well done, you've all successfully passed Pro.
I'm not going to slow down. The attitude and the way of life rubs off on you. I finally had a start date come through for my 32-week training course, so I just need to make sure I keep working hard, pack my bags, and get myself down there.
I remember getting on the train by myself with a bag over my shoulder, ready to travel down to Lympstone, 18 years old. Lympstone's the training centre where you do all your training. It was probably the first time that I'd properly left home to do anything. As a train pulls into the station, which is right outside the training centre itself, you're confronted with these massive aerial assault courses, ropes hanging down, guys in camouflage crawling everywhere. Yeah, I quickly started to think to myself, what have I done here? You get off the train, you get marched straight up to the hairdressers. Well, it's not a hairdresser, it's some bloke with a set of shears. All your hair comes off, you get given more kit and equipment that you could possibly know what to do with. Then you get shown how to do basically everything. Ironing, shaving, washing, and I mean literally washing. You know, we're stood in a big shower block and some naked Marine walks in and shows you how to wash properly. I'm not kidding either. The reason being, he told us, you know, if I found out any of you haven't washed, shaved or ironed, you know, I've shown you how to do it now, so you've got no excuses. I've just made it idiot proof. Throughout the training, you have what's called the commando spirit. It's what's drilled into you. It's the ethos of the Marines. They build themselves around it. It's courage, it's determination, unselfishness, cheerfulness in the face of adversity. And it's everywhere. It's plastered all over the gym walls, all over the accommodation. In the galley, it's where you eat. It's, you know, it's drilled into you where when you're put into a hard situation, deliberately put into hard situations throughout training, the ethos are always in the back of your mind. You know, you're thinking to yourself, I need to have courage to face what's in front of me head on. I need to have determination. You know, this is a hard situation. This is tough. I'm not going to get through it if I'm weak-minded. I can't be selfish. All my mates are around me and they're relying on me. I can't let them down because I know they're not going to let me down. And lastly, they teach you how to be funny. You know, when times get tough, you can always expect a Marine to crack a joke, make light of the situation. You know, life is difficult, whatever you're doing. You know, it's important to have a good sense of humour to get yourself through the dark times.
5 rounds.
It's really only the start of the journey of pain that you go through. But a lot of people will see it as one of the harder tests because of the length of time you're doing it for. You've got 73 minutes to complete it. It's 2 miles and then a 4-mile run back. It culminates in a shoot. Out of 10 shots, you've got to get 6 on target.
Target. Up!
The night before any exercise or test, it's a weird time. Everyone's got their own different mindsets on what they're doing. But there's sort of a tense atmosphere going around because everyone wants to pass, but everyone's scared of failing. I like to get all my admin done and relax, get as much decent scran down as possible. When I get to the start line, I know it's up to me just to put the effort in, and I've done as much as I can. The start of the endurance course marks the start of our 4 commando tests. When you get to the end of that, you're a quarter of the way through. It doesn't signify that you're a Royal Marine. You're just a little bit of the way there.
Give it all you got now, okay? Hard work up to this point. First commando test, let's kick things off. 3, 2, 1. Out!
When you step off that start line, you've got to get your head in the game. Everything hurts, it always does. You're running flat out, your lungs are burning. You then jump in the water, you've got the cold water shock, gasping for air. The many times that you want to stop on that, but you've just got to keep going, step after step. Everything feels flat, dead. You feel like you've got nothing left. You've drained your body to the core. The only thing that keeps you going is you want the end goal more than you want to stop.
Stand back, Towsy.
4-mile run back to camp. Most people are struggling to keep going at that point. You get through camp and you have to do a shoot.
Take a magazine. Take Towsy weapons. Ready?
The idea is to show that you're fit to fight at the end of doing all that hard physical exercise. If you don't hit 6 out of 10 shots, you fail the entire course. So everything rides on that moment.
Up!
I've learned so much, done so much. It's been the hardest 31 weeks of my life, but also the most rewarding in what I've achieved and done.
Everyone passed. Some very good scores there.
Passing the endurance course was an achievement, but doesn't signify that you're a Royal Marine, really only beginning. I've still got 3 tests to go. My desire to be a Marine started when I was really young. I envied what my mates have, the easy lifestyle. But then, when you compare what you're doing, I don't regret it at all.
So eventually, from the 52 that started in my troop, it finished with 10 original lads in it, one of which being myself. On top of being handed my Green Beret, I was awarded the King's Badge, which is awarded to the top Marine in each troop, which meant I got to wear a little circular badge at the top of my uniform, but which also meant that I stood out slightly from the crowd, which is certainly not something you want to do when you arrive at your first proper unit.
The Green Beret is the mark of Britain's commando forces. It's something we've held on to as Royal Marines since the Second World War. It marks every man in the Corps. It makes you part of a brotherhood that stands apart from everyone else.
The 30 miler is the last commando test. Probably the hardest one. Been in training for 31 weeks now. We're all pretty tired, getting close to the end. I'm feeling probably the most nervous I've felt in all of training. One last push to show that we deserve the respect of that Green Beret. And at the end of tomorrow, I'll have earned my green lid. I'll be a Royal Marines Commando. The 30 miler is an 8-hour walk/jog across Dartmoor with 40 pounds of kit. Always hit a wall at some point. All they want to do is stop. You know you can't. And there's no option to stop. Physically, it doesn't make a difference how I feel. My car was burning like hell. My shins were absolutely smashed. There's no way I'm coming off that course, because I have to finish it.
Grab a nutty bar, grab a pasty if you need it.
It's all about that end goal. I'll have earned the right to be respected by all the other trained ranks. Getting that green lid and being part of that elite club to be a Royal Marine Commando.
So after 32 seemingly never-ending weeks of training, I finally headed off to a commando unit. Every unit's made up of approximately 600 guys, and it's there where you start learning how to actually be a soldier. You actually learn far more at a unit than you ever would through training. You know, training is like a whirlwind. It's made to break you down, to weed out the weak. Then at a unit, you actually start trying to relearn the stuff you couldn't take in through training, because it's at a far more slower pace. You live with all the lads in a big flat accommodation. It's actually very similar setup to university halls, except every day today is very different. You know, you travel to Norway to learn how to operate in the Arctic conditions. You travel to Belize to train in the jungle. And best of all, you get to do this with all your mates. I didn't enjoy all the pomp and ceremony that went with the military, the parades, the polishing boots, but I just loved being a soldier, and that's why I decided to put myself forward for the Royal Marine Sniper course. I managed to get selected for what's called a pre-course selection for the sniper course. The course itself is so difficult, with the pass rate so low, that they want to make sure those who are allowed onto the course are already of a high caliber of soldier. The Royal Marine Sniper course is regarded as the hardest sniper course in the world. We started with 16, 2 of which were Dutch Marines, 2 from the SAS. If my initial training for the Marines was the hardest test physically I've had, this was without doubt the toughest test mentally. It was the most self-induced pressure I'd put myself under. The initial phase of the course is what's called the shooting phase, which is 4 weeks of shooting the sniper rifle pretty much non-stop, which is awesome, really. But the novelty soon wears off and reality hits when you begin to approach the last week, which is the test week. The test is made up of 4 different ranges. We have close range, which is 400 meters, mid-range, which is 500 to 800, long range, which is 900 to 1200, and you eventually go out to 1500 meters, which is the extreme long. You have to pass all the distances. It's a lot of mental arithmetic, a lot of mental maths. You're calculating bullet drop, wind speed, even down to things like the air pressure, humidity. Only half of the course passed this initial phase. After that, we moved on to the skills phase, made up of map reading, observation, and camouflage. They're all topics that you would have covered before as a Marine, but just performed to a much higher standard. The biggest difference from the initial training is you've got no one sat there telling you to go harder, telling you to go faster. You're expected to motivate yourself. You take responsibility for yourself and for getting yourself up to standard. At the end of the course, we finished with 6, and I was thankfully one of those. Now qualified as a sniper, I joined MST, which is the Maritime Sniper Team. It's basically shooting a sniper out the back of a helicopter. Our main roles were anti-narcotics and anti-weapon smuggling, specifically weapons trying to be smuggled into Syria. I don't want to go into too much detail about the operations, except some of the lessons I've learned from working in these highly volatile situations. One of the biggest lessons I took away from my deployments was to acknowledge my emotions. I was finding myself in certain situations where I was scared and fearful, but acknowledging that this is in fact a scary situation. I'm allowed to be fearful. I'm allowed to be scared. This is what allowed me to take control of my emotions, not let them take control of me. By accepting the situation I was in, I was able to start working towards getting out of it. You have to learn to deal with fear when it is out of your control. It's about maintaining a clarity of mind, a clear decision-making process. It's important to practice this in everyday situations. You've got to put yourself in scenarios that really stretch you, whether that's physically or if it's mentally. Just take yourself out of your comfort zone and learn to deal with fear while it's in a controlled environment. As I'm sure many of you are aware now, I'm no longer in the military. I left after serving for 7 years. From all the skills I've learned, all the experiences I've had, the thing I take with me most is the commando spirit, the courage, determination, unselfishness, and the cheerfulness in face of adversity. Those ethos are so drilled into everything you do in the Marines that you can't get away from them, you can't forget them. They really do go with you everywhere, and they're in everything you do.
Hi everyone, I hope you enjoyed the video I put up for you. Since then I've had a few questions come in, so I'll answer a couple of them for you now.
First question was, what was the hardest part of training? It's a very subjective question. Everyone finds certain parts easier, certain parts more difficult. Very few people drop out of training due to the personal fitness. The PRMC that you do before training proves you're up to the standard already. So once you go into training, the PTs will keep you, improve you. So your physical fitness really does have little to do with dropping out. I'd say you lose a lot of people near the start of training simply because they realise it's not for them. They realise it's not the right career choice, which is fair enough. It's not like the films or the Call of Duty games they play. The glamour quickly wears off from training when that first 4 a.m. alarm goes off. After the initial dropouts, mostly everyone else either leaves or fails because they're mentally weak. I'd say you don't know what cold really feels like until you've been in training. You certainly don't know what tired feels like. You are operating day to day on 2, maybe 3 hours of sleep. Throw in the stressful situations that you're being put through and people start to break. You have to realise that training is one big game, really. You're never going to make your bed properly. You're never going to complete a task correctly. The instructors there just simply aren't going to let that happen. Some people just couldn't get their heads around that they'd spent all night preparing their uniform, making it immaculate, and still failed the inspection the next day. They're the ones that complained that it wasn't fair. They're the ones that didn't make it. The second question sent in was, what was the most difficult commando test for myself? For those of you that don't know, the commando tests are the penultimate week of training. They're 4 individual tests set over 5 days, and they're the final step to becoming a Marine. They are made up of the 9-mile speed march, which is exactly what it says on the tin. It's 9 miles carrying 25 pounds of kit plus your rifle. That's to be completed in under 90 minutes. You run this as part of a troop, so all you really have to do is keep pace with the pack, just stay in the pack. And it's generally considered the easiest of the 4 tests. The second is the Tarzan assault course, which is a combination of aerial obstacles, walls to climb over, tunnels to crawl through. That's to be completed in under 13 minutes. So it's a lot shorter, but it's a lot more intense. It's 10 minutes of just absolutely going for it, which is a lung buster. Next, the day after that, you have the endurance course, which is a test which a lot of people struggle with. It's 2 miles of cross-country running with obstacles scattered throughout, followed by a 4-mile road run back to camp, culminating in a shoot where you have to hit 6 out of 10 on the target. The shoot at the end is less about your shooting ability because it's only 25 metres, it's not a difficult shoot. It's more about maintaining your weapon. You've crawled through a lot of tunnels, water obstacles, you're going to be tired. They just want to check that you're taking care of your weapon system, and at the end of it, you're still fit to fight. The final test is the infamous 30-miler. It's the last commando test and probably the hardest. It's 30 miles across Dartmoor, carrying 40 pounds of kit and your rifle. At this point, it's really about mental fortitude. The 30-miler in isolation is a difficult exercise. The fact that you've done 3 other exercises building up to it, plus the 31 weeks of training prior, you're really starting to feel it now in your legs. I remember for me personally, it was a really horrible day in terms of rain. It was sideways rain, windy, and I started seizing up in my legs, so I couldn't straighten my leg fully. So I ended up having to hobble on it sort of at a slight crooked angle. The first couple of miles, it hits you, and then you realise you're in this for another 7 hours or so. 8 hours is the cut-off, so it's difficult, but you know it's the last step, so that alone is enough to get you through it. Finally, the question I had sent in quite a lot was, what do the sniper tests consist of? I've already spoken a little bit about the shooting phase, which is the first part of the sniper course and the first compulsory test you'll face. After that, the tests, they come on pretty thick and fast. You have a field exercise, which is used as a confirmation of everything you've learned over the course. It's 2 weeks long. The first half is rural, which is in the country, woods, wood blocks, things like that. You basically end up spending a week in a hole in the ground with 3 other guys. It's what we refer to as an OP, which is an observation post. It's usually only a few hundred meters away from where the enemy are, no bigger than probably 6 foot by 6 foot, and you do everything in that OP. You eat, you sleep, you go to the toilet there. I mean, everything. You can't leave it. You're that close to the enemy. Everything needs to be within the confines of that OP. And being that close to the enemy, there's no cooking, there's no talking. It's a pretty miserable place to be. You then take turns inside that, with sentry, with observing the enemy, with sleeping, administration. It's sort of like a rota you're working. So over that 2 week period, you won't ever sleep really for more than 2 hours at a time. After the rural phase of the field exercise, you move on to the urban phase, which is basically built up areas. You get given an enemy position in a town. You need to covertly insert into a location where you can observe the enemy. At this point, though, to be honest, you're just glad to get out of the rain and get out of the hole in the ground. After the field exercise, you have the skills phase. That's made up of map reading, observation, and stalking. As a sniper, your map reading and navigation skills must be second to none. For the observation, the instructors, what they do is they hide 10 objects out in a big panoramic area for you to look at. You have 40 minutes to locate them all and identify them with your binoculars and scopes. It's actually quite hard to explain unless you've done it, but this is actually what I'd say most people fail the sniper course on. It's certainly what I found most difficult on the course. This is almost what failed me. Again, like I said, it's hard to explain until you've done it, but it is actually a really difficult skill set to obtain. Just a lot of practice. Finally, the stalking, which is pretty much a culmination of everything you've learned in terms of your observation, your camouflage, and your shooting. You get given an enemy position, which you must use your map reading skills to locate. Using your camouflage and concealment, you need to crawl into a position where you can set your rifle up. You then fire off 3 shots, hopefully without being seen, and then extract. That's what gets you full marks. It really is just the basic bread and butter of a sniper. So all the tests are conducted over a 1 week period. You do 7 of each discipline, of which you're allowed to drop your 2 lowest scores. So each discipline is taken out of 100%. So your 7 scores, you drop your 2 lowest, and from your remaining 5 scores, you take an average percent, and then you must score over 70% in each separate skill to pass. So it's quite a lot. It culminates in that final skills test week, which is difficult, but in the end, it's worth it. So thanks for listening. I hope you enjoyed the lecture and the little Q&A session, and I'll see you when you're back at school.